broadly, the owners, the board, management, that what are the uncertainties. And based on that, then we started to have a lot of workshops, including owners and the board and management, to define these uncertainties. And from here, then we identified in both companies 3 possible futures.
Right.
Do you wonder how trailblazing leaders sense at scale, evolve to innovate, and align the actions in this increasingly digital world? Welcome to the Exploring Leaders podcast. The experienced team at Digoshen interviews leaders from around the world for insights and inspiration on how to lead in the digital age. In this episode, Digoshen founder Liselette Engstam, who is also an independent board chair and director, researcher, author, and advisor, asks the questions.
Welcome to the show, Lars Husberg. Very nice to finally have you here.
Thank you, Liselette.
And I was thinking, for the people who might not know you, could you just describe yourself in a couple of sentences? Who are you? What's your focus?
If we take the professional part of me, I've been 40 years in business now, actually retired. And those 40 years, I spent roughly half in these technology consulting companies like IBM, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Accenture, Capgemini. And then the second half of my career with family-owned businesses as an advisor, as a deputy CEO or CEO. And now during the last 10 years, I've had board positions in family companies. And otherwise, I'm a happy grandfather, 3 children, 6 grandchildren, and try to live an active life. So I plan to work still at least 10 years.
That sounds wonderful. And knowing you, I know you are very active and also very holistic. You think a bit out of the box compared to many people. So I'm so glad to have you here. If you were to say, what is the kind of pivotal moment that has taken you to where you are today? What would you say?
The pivotal moment, I think that was during my studies at university, at business school. I always wanted to become a consultant. So then I thought that I have to study as many subjects as possible. That became also as little as possible in every subject. And my plan was to become a consultant, or I phrased it in those years to become a company doctor. But I couldn't study sales at the business school. So then I looked for a sales job and actually then started at IBM as my first job. And that also was a great company to be in, because that learned me a lot about quality, ambition, hard work, and setting up targets. But I think, and then it took me 10 years before I became a consultant and a strategy consultant. But I have always been very curious to learn about new things. And all my consulting career, I worked with strategic issues with my clients and transforming companies, being innovative, having innovation and using technology in innovative ways already in the 90s. I think, and that has been the trajectory all my life in my professional life. Yeah.
So a bit of curiosity and a bit of drive is what I hear that has really gotten you forward also. I guess most of the things cannot have gone fine. I guess you've learned also from the mistakes. Is that right?
Oh, yes, I've done many mistakes. I think I lost one of the biggest deals at IBM's history in the late 80s, and I've done very bad career moves. And together with my clients, we have made very bad, costly decisions. Yes, I've learned a lot because I usually work with people who want to take risks also.
Yeah. And without risk, no gain.
Exactly.
I was thinking that I wanted to explore 2 topics with you. And I know that you now, when you work so much with family businesses and private businesses, you have a special thought around how to align the interest between the board, the owners, and the management. Can you share a bit with us? What is the background of that, and how do you work with that?
The background goes close to 20 years back when I took a boardman training for board members. And Mikko Haapanen, the founder of Boardman, he told at that course that, hey, it is very important in a company, especially in a family business, that the company has very skillful, competent people as owners in the board and in the management. And all this skill, competence has to be available for the company every day. And that was a seed in my brain that I started then to use that when I worked with family businesses. And this has now become also a concept in Boardman. We talk about the owner board management concept, the OBM concept. And so that and of course you have to have certain owner skills. We talk about the skills and competencies in the board, but you have to have them also with the owners. And of course, it's clear that we have tried to educate management and look at management skills. And then in today's business, things are happening. A lot of things are happening, and it's quite difficult to have a clear picture. So when everything starts with the owner strategy, in my view, you can never write a complete owner strategy that would answer all your questions.
Right.
So then you have to have a certain dialogue in the chain. And you can have some principles in the owner strategy, but then you have to have the dialogue, and you have to have a shared view of your business, the situation of the company, and clear roles. And then you have to work together. One thing that is important for the owners is to set the level of risk, the risk appetite. And I think that's one of the most important things in the board and for management to check with the owners. Hey, what's your risk appetite in this business? Do we want to have a lower risk appetite, or do we see a lot of opportunities? Do we want to take risks? How do we share the different risk elements? So that's one thing, because we want a lot of things in the business today is to making bets. And so I think this is the starting point for that type of cooperation and dialogue.
You can check out more hints and tips in the blog post covering this podcast episode of Exploring Leaders at the Digoshen blog, which you can find at digoshen.com.
Yeah. I want to come back to a couple of questions, but before that, I also wanted to bring up the question about the future. And as you were saying, the future is partly foggy. So can you share a bit about your views and perspectives, and also how you work with it?
Yes, I'm chairman in three boards, and in two of the boards, I had been in earlier strategy projects, but they were more traditional, like inside out things. But now we looked at the markets and thought, hey, now we have to do an outside in strategy approach to really understand. And then we found a good partner that works with future and foresight. And there's a lot of interesting learnings in this process. But what we started to do is we wanted to have, as I said, we cannot really play away the uncertainty. We can create clarity.
Right.
And when we have clarity, then we can make those decisions. How do we want to renew and make bets? So with this company, we started to work with future pictures. So we started to discuss about uncertainty and ask the organization broadly, the owners, the board, management, and a lot of people in the organization, that what are the uncertainties. And based on that, then we started to have a lot of workshops, including owners and the board and management, to define these uncertainties. And we did then uncertainty tables. And from here, then we identified in both companies three possible futures. And an interesting thing was with these possible futures, we went to our customers and said, hey, we think of the future might have these three possible outcomes. How about you? And that it was very fruitful discussions. But the most important thing here was that when our people came back from these interviews, they were so engaged and enthusiastic. They told us, we are a great company. Our customers are not even thinking about this.
Yeah.
So that was a very positive, energizing thing. So that brought clarity. And from these three different future pictures, we looked at each picture, threats, opportunities, and what should be done anyway. So we got a first view of a, let's say, growth portfolio. And then we did another survey to the board, the owners, and the management to set then ambition level input. And then from this, we got roughly a dozen growth opportunities. We did deep dives, business cases, and now we have a process to discuss about the future. And this was maybe the biggest benefit or advantage because now the owners, the board, the management, everyone could jointly discuss without any own agendas or anything predefined, discuss about the future that was new for everyone. That was again very energizing for everyone, and it was very innovative also. And two other benefits from this was that in both companies, one of the three future pictures had to do with how to create value through sustainability. And also in both companies, the innovation process and innovation work was really focused in a much, much better way than ever before.
And I think two things on that. I think that is so interesting because in many cases we have risk committees, but few of us have innovation committees. And actually, we don't follow innovation in the same way. So I have two questions. One is, when you have the discussions between the board, the owners, and the management, is that the same discussions or do you have it at kind of different time ways? And how do you guide and monitor these innovation bets?
Yeah, yes. First of all, we have the board together with management. We monitor the three future pictures because there are some assumptions.
But
We
you
have
keep
KPI.
the pictures. You don't just put one, you keep all of them.
We keep all of them. Then we look at the assumptions to see that, okay, to which picture is the future going to be leaning against? Because we have already plans for the different futures. And based on those futures, we are making our big bets. So then we look at, okay, which type of future is going to be more, let's say, more probably in the future. So that's one thing. So we constantly look into the future. So that's one thing. And then and then we of course have a growth portfolio based on those growth opportunities we have identified. And then we also have a good material to take to the owner steering. So the owner steering is active, so they are partly then also following the strategy as the board is reporting to the owners through the owner steering. And the owners have been involved in that. And also we have changed the operations, so we don't do annual budgets anymore.
Okay.
So we have a 15-month frame, and then we have the year divided in three parts. And so it's a flexible operations, and then we are constantly monitoring the futures, and then we have the growth portfolio, which is dynamic in that way.
And if you were to say, how often do the owners look at this? How often do the board look at this? And how often do the management?
The board actually looks at it, I would say, at least four times a year. And in one of the companies, we will have a portal with all those strategic projects where the board has access to, so we can follow that daily if we want.
Wow. Very
And to the owners, we have a report 4 times a year.
I think that's very interesting. I think the speed is also really interesting. Most boards are not yet up to the speed that you are in terms of looking at and monitoring the future and where you're going. What was challenging in getting to this position?
When I started as chairman, I discussed with all the board members, and everyone agreed that, hey, we have to look more into the future. We have to discuss strategy, bigger questions. And then after 6 months, I had a workshop with the board members to check that do we have those capabilities, those skills we need to have. And then everyone agreed that yes, we have all the basic skills we need to manage a business. But actually, we don't know much about this company itself.
Right.
We don't know about the markets, the customers, the competitors, the value chain, our product development, our products. How can we do our job if we don't know the company? Then we made a decision together with the CEO that, hey, now we have to educate the board. We totally reworked the annual clock. How do we run the board meetings? They were more like a lot of the board meetings were like workshop like meetings with management. We synchronized the management annual clock with the board annual clock. And then also we made a decision that we have to have monthly board meetings. And then the following year, we educated the board into the company together with management. And then after that, we then realized that yes, we know this company from inside out, not from outside in. And that's when we started to look at the future pictures. So actually, I think the hard thing was to realize that we don't know about this company enough to do our job. And that was a collective decision that, hey, now we have to do, and then agree with management that, hey, now we have to understand about this company. And then
I think it's
actually from
interesting.
there, it has been it has been quite easy to do it.
And I think it's interesting as you're sharing, because it's a bit of hard to agree to that yourself. You're supposed to be knowing about it.
Yeah.
So it's also a bit of kind of bias in many boards that you should know, but actually don't really know.
Yeah. Part of this was also that to, let's say, younger board members that had a, let's say, a total different cycle speed compared to us who had been sitting in the board for a longer period. So that diversity played very well.
I think that's also a very interesting hint for a lot of others that the reason that you might hire a younger board person is not because of the experience. In that sense, it might be, as you're saying, a cultural thing about the speed they can bring in.
Yeah, and we found two great board members, but we only could take one. So we took the one who had more board experience. The other one had no board experience. But I made a deal with him that I will have a lunch with him every quarter to teach him about the job we do. And then he started after a year, and he has great skills.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, and management they're amazed about the competence we have in the board at the moment, about technology, about startups, about company acquisitions, and all those type of things, technology in general.
And I guess the boards you're chairman for, they're the companies, I guess they have a couple of years in the back?
Yes. The one that I'm mostly referring to is 105 years old. And I'm the first non-family member chairman of that board. And the other family company is 60 years old. And the third one is 15 years old.
To get even more value out of the podcast series Exploring Leaders, you can find everything from research reports to advice and courses at the Digoshen website, which you can find at digoshen.com.
Amazing. If you now think back on the role of the chairman as you're playing it. What do you see is the difference from what you experienced before, and what on the back of that would be recommendations that you would give to other chairmen?
I think my role, as in most of my jobs, first of all, what is mostly motivating me and where I get the most satisfaction is to see others being successful. And as this is the case, I usually try to, let's say, engage and inspire people. And especially in this 105-year-old company, we had previously the challenge we discussed in the board that, hey, where are all the great ideas? Why don't management bring us any new ideas to the board? We would like to support for growth. And now we don't have that case anymore. So I think that my job has very much been to inspire the board, to make the board curious and engaged and build energy. So it's, I would say, leadership,
Yeah.
not so much board practices, because people know about the board practices, and still sometimes boards are pictured as, I don't know, very odd type of
Yeah.
organizations,
Yeah.
like old-fashioned medieval type of uh,
Yeah.
organizations. But I think, but it's still about people
Yeah. Yeah.
and engaging people, inspiring people, getting people to be, as we know from your innovation work also, that we in the board we need to sense, we need to pivot, and we need to align. So as we say, that we work for the company every day.
Yeah, very interesting. Can you share something about how do you work specifically with your CEOs? So my first question, is it the same across the three companies, or is it a difference? And how much contact do you have with them? And what would you say that you kind of mostly support them with?
Yes, I have weekly, bi-weekly contacts with them, and we have complete trust, transparency. We can discuss about everything. I haven't come across any subject we haven't been able to discuss. And I think that with the CEOs, we discuss a lot. We don't have a specific agenda, but we put in Microsoft Notes subjects that we would like to discuss, and then we make some notes. So we discuss a lot and we share thoughts, and so it's really like sparring. And then also the board members
Mm,
in all three companies actively have discussions with management in the board about marketing, about innovation, about technology, about HR, not as board members, but
yeah,
as experts. So we try to keep it very clear that we are not, say, engaging in the operations.
yeah.
But if they, yeah, and that's in all the three companies. And haven't had any issues with that.
And going forward, and I'm super grateful because you're part both of the Digoshen board
Yeah.
community and the board's impact community. And now you're going to Paris.
Yes,
And what are you going to do there?
I'm going to facilitate workshops about sustainability and how to get sustainability on the strategic agenda in family-owned companies. And sustainability is on the agenda in all these three companies where I work. And family-owned companies, they have a different time perspective on the business.
Yeah.
They usually say that their quarter is 25 years,
Yeah.
not 3 months. So it's 25 years. So they want to develop the company for the next generation. And in one of the companies, the fourth generation is taking over, and in the other company, the third generation is coming. So they owned companies want to have a future-proof business.
Yeah.
And what is better future-proof than sustainable?
Yeah.
So it's actually a normal part of family business if they really look how they want to run the business, develop the business, and then of course get support from the customers and the employees especially a younger employee.
Mm.
If you combine this, I think it's a no-brainer for family-owned businesses.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think what they struggle with is how to develop these transition plans. And of course, many family-owned businesses don't like so much regulation and those type of things. So how do we wipe away all that governance discussion and find the real essence in sustainability from a strategy point of view?
Which I think is fantastic, and I'm sure you're going to
Yeah.
contribute enormously to those discussions, and we're very grateful that you're
Yes.
supporting us with this. Our time is running out, but I wanted to ask you a couple of more questions. My first question is, what inspires you? Where do you get your inspiration? Is there any particular book or podcast or source or network that inspires you?
I have to be here really honest and say the Digoshen Board Impacts Forum network has been, I would say, the most inspirational part of my own board education.
Thank you so
So
much.
it has been a very good network.
Mm,
Then another good network has been Boardman, which really is a think tank where we do a lot of research in board work and ownership and try to develop new concepts, and I'm active also there. And I think that I'm very actively engaging with people, and I do a lot of own thinking, and I'm maybe quite creative mind as such also.
yeah.
And I'm good in, as many people say, I'm good in listening, and then I gather a lot of facts, and then I shake it in a box and spill it out on the desk, and then it's structured and everyone understands, this is how it works. And of course, as I said earlier, I get very inspired from other people's successes.
Mm.
So just helping all those to be successful, I think that's giving me most energy.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So my final question is a question that we kind of work with, and that is, if you were a furniture, what would you be?
Maybe I would be a television.
All right. Tell us why.
I don't know. Bring a lot of ideas and yeah, maybe that. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think that was this was the first mention, I can say that.
Yeah, but I think television, at least in my young ages, it was
Yeah.
a furniture.
Yeah, yeah. And it's also the other thing that's interesting that I think about, which relates to you, is that it's always moving. There's always
Yeah.
something happening.
Yes, it changes a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Lasse, for
Okay,
sharing
thank
all
you.
of this knowledge. If people would like to contact you, how would they best do that?
I think I'd like to share my contact details as part
So
of
we
the
can do
board.
that
Yeah.
in a short introduction of this, and that would mainly be on LinkedIn, right? So they can
Yeah.
reach out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, the team that's going to meet you in a lot of more international groups now in Digoshen and in the Climate Governance Initiative that you're joining,
Yeah.
they will also, of course, be able to contact you and talk to you directly. Thank you so much, Lasse, for this
Thank you.
interview. Very
It was a
inspiring.
pleasure.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
A lot
Bye.
of fun. Yes. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to Exploring Leaders, a podcast produced by Digoshen with the ambition to inspire insightful leadership in the digital age. If you found this episode interesting, join the momentum to amplify the voices of trailblazing leaders by sharing it with others for inspiration. For any questions or recommendations on other inspiring leaders you like to listen to, contact us via our website, digoshen.com, or via social media as LinkedIn or Twitter.